Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking an incredible story of adventure, self-discovery, and, well, a pretty major culture clash. We're going to dive into the experiences of Swiss photographer John Bernhard. He documented this absolutely massive North American road trip in his book, America's Call. Now, this isn't just your typical travel diary. It's actually a time capsule of a totally lost era, and honestly, a blueprint for total personal reinvention. So let's retrace his steps and see exactly how a journey across a continent can fundamentally alter the whole trajectory of a person's life. I want you to imagine something for a second. You've got a steady, super secure job in a beautiful, safe city, right? Now, could you pack your entire life into just a single backpack, leave your family and your comfort zone totally behind, and step out into the complete unknown? Seriously, could you do it? That requires a rare kind of bravery, or, maybe a rare kind of restlessness. It's a leap of faith that most of us really only ever dream about from the safety of our living rooms. But for John Bernhard, well, staying put simply wasn't an option. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, The Call of America. So picture this. It's 1978, and the call of the open road has just become too loud for John to ignore. Keep in mind, this was a time way before smartphones and GPS. Traveling meant actually relying on paper maps, your own intuition, and a whole lot of kindness from total strangers. And the scale of this journey, it's literally mind-boggling. 45,000 kilometers. To put that into perspective, that is more than the entire circumference of the Earth. Just traversed across the sprawling landscapes of North America, John and his friend Alain set out to cross this massive expanse, armed with nothing but their backpacks, a shared dream of exploration, and some serious, quiet courage. They were aiming to experience the whole continent, from the freezing north all the way down to the sweltering south. As you can imagine, the logistics of a trip like this were intense. They departed from Toronto in the dead of winter in 1978, and the route zigzagged all the way across Canada, from east to west, before plunging deep into the United States. We're talking the Great Plains, the East Coast, the Deep South, the Western Deserts, California, the whole shebang. But reality hits pretty hard on the road. Alain actually had to abandon the journey early on because, well, he simply ran out of money. John, though, he kept going. He continued alone, finally arriving in New York in the spring of 1979. And here is the ultimate twist. Along the way, down in Texas, he met a woman named Tina who would actually later become his first wife. By 1980, this epic trip had changed him so profoundly that he just left Switzerland for good and moved permanently to Houston. Which brings us to Section 2, America Then and Now. Now, because Bernhard kept these really meticulous journals, logging his daily adventures, his book serves as this incredible historical snapshot, and it illustrates a pretty stark contrast. Back in 1979 America, it was the tail end of the sexual revolution. John describes this incredibly carefree environment where hitchhiking was just normal. People would routinely open their doors to bearded backpackers, and travel was remarkably cheap. He bumped into dozens of young people doing exactly what he was doing every single day. Now compare that to modern America. It's wild how much things have changed. Today, hitchhiking is basically extinct, and even taking Greyhound buses is considered by some to be pretty dangerous. Ever since 9/11, there's been this heightened fear of strangers and immigrants, and on top of that, young people today are just really burdened. The source actually highlights that something like 90% of the population goes into heavy debt just for university. So a carefree, completely untethered gap year, it's nearly impossible these days. Moving right along, Section 3, The Culture Clash. So you have to understand, this wasn't just a geographical journey for John, it was totally a psychological one too. The deep differences in mindset are really what convinced him to never return to his homeland. On the one hand, you've got the Swiss mentality. John described feeling downright claustrophobic in Switzerland, and not just because the country is small, but because of this cultural mindset that fiercely prioritizes stability and secure jobs. His family and his colleagues, they just couldn't comprehend why on earth he'd leave a steady job in Geneva just to wander around. But contrast that with the American mentality, specifically the vibe he found in cities like Houston. It's an environment that completely embraces constant mobility and reinvention. John observed a society where people are always moving, always changing, a place where even a doctor might suddenly wake up and decide, hey, I'm going to reinvent myself as a lawyer. For a young guy seeking freedom, this American culture of endless second chances was exactly what he was searching for. All right, Section 4, The Swiss Footprint in America. It's fascinating because when John made that huge decision to stay in the US, he was actually, totally unknowingly, joining this massive legacy of Swiss immigrants who have profoundly shaped the country. The footprint is staggering. Take Albert Gallatin, for example. This guy was a Swiss immigrant who literally negotiated the Louisiana Purchase with Napoleon for Thomas Jefferson. I mean, wow. Then you have Karl Bodmer, whose paintings from the 1830s captured these beautifully unfiltered, unidealized realities of Native American life. And of course, there's Robert Frank, another Swiss photographer. His groundbreaking work in the 1950s completely revolutionized modern American photography. So, in a way, John Bernhard was just tapping into this incredibly rich vein of his countrymen, observing, documenting, and expanding the American frontier. To really put this long tradition of transatlantic migration into perspective, get a load of this number: 75,252. According to 2010 data from our source, that is the staggering number of Swiss citizens currently living in the United States. That actually represents more than 10% of all Swiss expatriates worldwide. So yeah, these diplomatic and cultural ties, they run super deep, dating all the way back to the early 1800s. And now for our final section, Section 5, From Images to Words. So here is a really interesting question. How does a photographer, a guy whose entire career is built on capturing visual moments, process a memory this massive? Decades later, John realized that pictures just weren't enough anymore. He had to write. He actually noted, writing suddenly becomes a kind of trance and the world around you stops. John describes how he used that meticulously kept 1970s journal as his mental anchor, and to write America's Call, he literally locked himself in his house. He didn't even walk the 10 meters over to his photography studio. He completely ignored his phone, he ignored his family, he even stopped showering for a bit. He entered this absolute complete state of flow, searching deep within himself to reinvent those conversations and recapture the raw, visceral emotion of his youth. It was a totally new way of exploring himself. We've seen how a 45,000-kilometer leap of faith completely transformed John Bernhard's life. It showed him a new culture, gave him a new career, and honestly introduced a whole new way of existing in the world. Now, sure, the world might be a lot more expensive and complicated today, but that human need, that drive to explore and reinvent yourself, that hasn't changed at all. So I'll leave you with this. What does your own ultimate journey of reinvention look like? What is the leap of faith that you are waiting to take right now? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.